Welcome to What the Hex, your source for Warhammer Underworlds in under 30 tips and tricks you can use to make the perfect deck. I'm your co-host, Davy, and with me I have the efficient engineers of deck building, my co-host, Skyler. How are you, Skyler?
Keeping my deck straight down to 32.
And Brian, how are you doing?
What's up? I'm good.
For context, we're recording for the second time on the 11th of February. We are waiting as Valentine's Day approaches for the arrival of the lovelorn warband, the Grave Breakers, who should be arriving, I don't know, hopefully soon, because 'tis the season and I would love to get them in our hands. Our topic today is deck building in the Nemesis age. We were trying to figure out what to cover. You know, we've been covering big events, we've been covering new releases, and it's been a while since we had time for one of these sort of on their own standalone episodes. And what we noticed was with our big turnout, Skyler, we were up pretty high numbers still there.
Yeah, we had 18 people out at League this last week and 22 people being tracked as a part of the League every week right now.
That's amazing. A number of those folks are relatively new, though, and as they, some of them start out with just the pure rivals, and as they start to move into Nemesis deck building, we notice that they have questions about that, and we're like, well, this phenomenon is not unique to our local. There are people who are picking up the game. And we see them in our Discord. We'll drop in and say, "Hey, I'm starting the game," or "I'm teaching it to somebody." And we decided that it would be helpful to make sure that there's a resource out there for folks who maybe need some tips, some help with deck building. And so this is put together with that in mind. Brian had our original idea for new players, getting players on board with Death Gorge, right? So. It's maybe the same vein as that.
Yeah, I can kind of see this as a continuation of that. Now that they're playing, deck building seems to be kind of a stumbling block, especially from Games Workshop perspective. Being a war game, this is their one system that includes cards, so that can kind of be unfamiliar for people. And we were realizing at our leagues that it's hard to get that one-on-one time and help guide people through their journey and through deck building. And so we're helping ourselves and helping you as well.
Yeah. That said, we're going to jump into it just as soon as we get done with our community shout outs. We've got one of our perennial favorites on here. That's Spent Glory. I'm bringing it up here. You all know that we love Spent Glory. There was some great LVO coverage on there, which I really enjoyed reading. But specifically, the most recent blog post is a call for love letters to a war band. Why? Basically, it's a call for community input. If there is a warband that you think is great, then let him know, and he'll help you kind of construct something. I think put something together to sing the praises of a warband. And we're not here talking about I love this warband because it's so powerful. I think it's more of I love this warband because it might be overlooked. He specifically calls out Underdog's Certainty of Death, which spent time on Elethane early when Elethane was really kind of an overlooked warband. Everyone was like, I don't know. They seem there's too little going on, too fragile, too wonky. And the idea is come talk about a warband and why you love it. So
yeah, these are those ride or die fans looking at you, Alex.
Yeah. Pitch the fun factor. Why do you love this warband?
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm looking forward to people taking them up on that. But, anyone else got something they want to shout out real quick?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out a YouTube channel that features unedited games. It posts extremely frequently. This is a channel called M2on2. And these are games where, as he plays Underworlds, sets up a camera, sets up some mics, and gets games to you. So if you're just looking to watch more games of Underworlds played, this is a great place to do so.
Yeah, I finally got a chance to check it out and was very tickled to note that there was a Masks Mournflight deck put together there. So,
Oh boy.
yeah, basically all you got to say is masks, and then I'm in. I'm really interested in how that deck is going together these days. So, let's see. I also had got pinged by someone from the Polish community to try to make sure people are aware of the Polish individual team championships, is what I have written down.
Okay.
There are nearly 30 folks signed up for it. There's 3 tickets for Worlds. It is championship format, and it's April 13th and April 14th. And that is, I would say, I think it's almost safe to say the one of, if not the championship format capital of the world right now. Is there's a high concentration of players there. But if you're in the European area or willing to travel there, that'd be a great time, I think. We can't be talking about tickets without talking about Canada. So,
yep, got 2 events to shout out here. Starting with the first one, May 4th will be the Alberta Classic, held by Derek Cat Murder, the man who took LVO this year and last. May 4th is a single day event on a Saturday in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, at the Ogre's Den Gaming Club. Don't have specific details. I failed to find the event page. That's probably on me. But yeah, check it out. It will be a world qualifier event. I don't know how many tickets they have. And then another event is a very busy May for Warhammer Underworlds. May 24th through the 26th on the other side of Canada in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, is the Canadian Tabletop Championship. It's a wargaming event with all the different Games Workshop game systems. I'm sure there will be more as well. But at Warhammer Underworlds will be there, hosted by G online, or Guillaume. Had the pleasure of meeting him at Worlds. Great guy. It will be a 2-day, 7-round Nemesis tournament. It is a world qualifier, and they have 3 tickets available. Check it out. Ottawa also looks like a great city.
Oh, snap. Speaking of tickets in Canada, GamesCon is also happening June 15th, and that's, I believe, Alberta. I would definitely double check me on that. But GamesCon Canada, June 15th, also a qualifier. I heard through the grapevine 2 tickets, one for first and second, but for sure one for first.
They can't keep getting away with this.
Is that the... there's an event ran by Beard Arm, right?
That might be it.
That might be it. This is GamesCon Canada, Edmonton, which is just north of Calgary, June 14th through the 16th.
Got it. Well, many opportunities for folks who want to do that, and I'm sure coverage will be coming out about some of those. But in the meantime, if you're gonna go to this,
we got to get our decks ready for these events.
Exactly. Professional segue from Brian there, as I was failing to stick the landing. We are talking to you about deck building. And before we jumped in, I just wanted to have us each maybe talk a little bit about what our personal sort of relationship with deck building is. Like, where does it occupy for you in your headspace with regards to playing Warhammer Underworlds? And Skyler, I know it's big for you, so why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, it's pretty high up there in the enjoyment column for me when it comes to Underworlds. I find that my relationship with Underworlds is in 2 parts. There's when I'm actively playing, and I love every bit of that. And then there's when I'm away from the table. And when I'm away from the table, that's when deck building really continues to occupy my thoughts. And it's something I love to tinker with, experiment with. And I think it's where a lot of the creativity gets to come from. And for me, I love thinking about the customization you get to do. And, when you're playing and that one objective or card isn't quite working the way that you want it to, and thinking through, your pool of options, thinking through what you could plug in. Is it a gem that you had overlooked before? Does it slot in just perfectly with what you're trying to do, or is it still acting a problem in that spot for you? But ultimately, it's quite a bit of the fun for me.
Yeah, I think it for me, it's not. I don't get quite as much enjoyment out of it, although I certainly do spend lots of time on it. For me, it's almost like I'm chasing that moment where I get something put together. You have an idea, like, hey, I think I could make, I don't know, as an example from early days, like I think I can make Magor hold objectives work, and it's all basing around the fact that Gartok can't be driven back, so he's a great one to sit on an objective. Or something like that. And then I'm like, okay, will that work? Start putting the things together. And if it comes together in a way that I think might click, having that feeling is like, I cannot wait to get this on the table to see if my theories about what does or doesn't work here actually stand up to reality. And I will find sometimes that'll happen with more than one warband in a given week. And I'll it might even just have been like, hey, I'm going to make, this is a warband I want to bring. And then I'd like to bring an alternate in case somebody, I don't know, doesn't want to play Gore Chosen or something like that. And as I'm building that back up, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I think this might work. And then being super excited. I love the spark and give to make me super excited to actually play on the tabletop. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, coming from a wargaming background, like a lot of the creativity comes in with like an army of assembling, building, painting your force. And like that's a lot of upfront expenditure and cost. In Underworlds, it's all in the deck. And once you have your warband selected, then it's all in the deck and you can do some really creative things. And I don't have to build and paint the minis, so that's a really big relief for me. And it's really fun when somebody does do that off meta pick, something that was considered competitively unviable and impresses everybody. So those are my favorite things. When I'm deck building, it is also my greatest source of frustration because those are my choices and I'm dumb. And sometimes that card swap is just staring me in the face and I'm like, why did I make this swap? This is dumb. Like, why didn't I think this through? Yeah. So it's my greatest frustration, but it's also just a card swap. And so what I strive for is that buttery smooth, like when you're in that flow state and your deck is just singing, and it just flows naturally. It's not impeding you. So it can be really frustrating, especially initially because you have a learning curve. But I think it's one of the most rewarding aspects of leveling up your game as well.
Yeah. I've never thought about it in those terms, but as someone who used to play Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar a fair amount, if you wanted to experiment, you're like, well, I guess I'm going to get and assemble and paint these 5 to 10 to 20 models just to see if it works out. And you're like, oh, it didn't work out. I guess that labor is going on the shelf. And here it's like, well, I'll just sleeve it back up and tuck it away or whatever the case. So, but let's get into the meat of it. So as a reminder, like these are going to be kind of rules of thumb and some of them are a little more ironclad than others. Some of them a little more flexible. They are generally done with an idea towards Nemesis, but they're principles that should apply across championship. I think by the time you are promoting to championship deck building, you probably are a little more comfortable with the process in general. But worth bearing in mind nonetheless. I'm gonna take a guess, but when you are starting, you setting out, hey, I have an idea for a deck. Let me see if I can make it work. Where do you guys like to start?
I like to start with the objectives and primarily surges.
Same.
So it's worth mentioning just what the basic rules of deck building are for objectives. There must be at least 12. There may be more in your deck, and no more than 6 can be surges. And I think this is probably obvious to everybody, but just in case, for all cards, you cannot duplicate a card more than once. So including if it was from a different printing or something like that, you can have a card that has the exact same effect, but it must have a different name on it.
Yeah, I kind of want to jump in there. Like
sure.
Speaking of our relationships with, deck building in the game, that like having all of the slots structured into different silos. So we've got, You can bring 6 surges, you can bring up to 12 or a minimum of 12 objectives in total. So you're looking at 6 plus end phases, and then you're looking at 20 as a minimum in your power deck, with no more gambits than you have upgrades. So generally looking at around 10 to 10 there. With all of that, and then layering in that you can only have one of each, that actually makes deck building so much more approachable for me than other games that I've tried. Like typically, I wouldn't have considered myself a card gamer before, or I wouldn't consider myself a typical card gamer prior to Warhammer Underworlds. I played quite a few of them, but I often found deck building to be extremely overwhelming in other game systems. There's multiple copies that you have to consider, like how many copies of a card am I going to bring into a deck? You have so many more cards that you're fitting in from such a larger pool. If you look at something popular like Magic the Gathering, you're looking at if you're playing the like standard edition versus something like Commander, which is a whole different ballgame. You're looking at 60 cards in a deck, and you're trying to figure out if you're bringing 4 of, 3 of, 2 of, 1 of, right, copies of cards. And so I find the deck building in this game to be far more approachable and each choice to be far more impactful as well when you're limited to such a small pool of options as to what can fit within the deck, and each card being able to offer that to you in one slot only.
Sure. I think maybe before we jump specifically into Surge's objectives, etc., there was a mention. We'll talk some, but there's this general principle of an Underworlds deck is at minimum 32 cards, unless we at some point get a warband that can break those rules, which it might be an interesting way to go about things. But that's kind of that's a fundamental truth of it, and the general accepted wisdom is that you keep it right at 32. We may talk a little bit about reasons to, whether they're good reasons or not, but reasons to break that rule. But can you talk from a deck building perspective why keeping it at 32 is generally such a good idea?
In a word, efficiency.
Exactly. Just think when you're drawing cards, so if you had to draw only one card, would you rather see this favorite card that would help you so much in this situation, or this other card that you kind of crammed into the deck? And if the answer is very strongly that first card, then that second card is actually just getting in your way of finding that card that you really, really need in that given moment.
All right. So bear that in mind as we move through some of these different categories. But Brian, you mentioned you start with objectives and you start generally with surges. Skyler, is that your same plan?
Yeah, always.
Yeah. I would say about 95% of the time is true for me. Every so often I'll say like, okay, like this is the suite of gambits and upgrades that I want to really make sure I include. So let's put those in, and now let me see what supports those. But that is far and away a much more rare occurrence than the rest. Tell me why surges, guys. Why is surges the place to start?
It's how you win. You get victory points or glory by completing your objectives, and not making those work for your game plan just means that you're holding yourself back. Well, starting there and then making sure that the rest of your deck supports how you win the game.
Mm-hmm. So that's objectives specifically. Talk to me about surges, though. Why surges within the objectives?
Because you're going to want some seed glory. You have these cards called upgrades that are going to cost you something. And if you draw any amount of those in your opening hand and you want access to them during that first round, which you do, you're going to want something to get the ball rolling. So there's 2 ways to get the ball rolling. One is to start getting bounty through kills. The other is through your surges. And so if you can maximize your surge plan for the game, and by that I mean like make sure that they're scoreable early for yourself, you can really kind of start ensuring that you can get the ball rolling and get upgrades out.
I think fundamentally with this game, we talk about the game can be won in sort of a snowball fashion, or at least the warbands get going in a snowball fashion, which is to say that as you get glory, it's because your points scored, your glory, are also a resource. So the more points you score, the more resource you have, and having surges that you can score earlier or even late, but on the fly, increase. If you were only scoring end phases in each round, then the most objective cards you could score in a given round would be 3, but your surges let you bump that to some pretty big numbers, but typically 4 or 5, something like that, if things are going particularly well.
Right. So on Skyler's point, half of your power deck is upgrades, which are inaccessible unless you get that seed glory. But the main benefit is what Davy was saying, in the sense of, if you have 3 objective cards in hand, you're only seeing those 3 for the end phase score. But if you have surges, you can see 4, 5, 6, because you're scoring that surge and moving on to a new card. And so you get more potential. To Skyler's point, you either get that seed glory via the surges during the round, or via bounty by getting kills. But kills necessitate dice rolling, which are unreliable. And so having surges that can score for things you do during the round that aren't dice dependent can be a great way to secure that you're getting to utilize the upgrades that are in your hand or later on in your deck.
Sure.
Yeah, I think to offset snowballing, as Davey was highlighting here, is that you want to make sure that you have at least some decks or some cards that are surges in your deck that can get you there without those dice rolls. It's not wrong to double down on dice rolls in your surges, but if you can give yourself some footing in your surges so that no matter what's going on, you can find that seed glory to get your momentum going, I think that's kind of the best place to start.
Yeah, cards that you have a whole lot of control over how they go off. Phil, who is here with us in spirit, as he's still sorting out some technical issues. We should be hearing his voice before too much longer on these episodes again. But his example here was Gale Force. That's a surge out of the Breakneck Slaughter deck, and it's after your warband has made 3 attacks. Doesn't matter if they're successful or not. Doesn't matter if they killed anyone or not. So you get to say, hey, I'm willing to take the risk of this hitting or missing, but regardless, I will progress towards this objective and score it.
Exactly.
On that spectrum are other ones that are, I would say, like a great example of something that has a whole lot more probability attached to it would be Break the Ice, which is your warband did the first damage in a round, and there's another one that's first to the punch. Beat to the punch, maybe.
Beat to the punch.
Beat to the punch, which is maybe a better example here because it's in the same deck, and that's you managed to land the first successful attack. That one is one to consider as having sort of 2 axes of probability. One is that it needs to have been, you have to roll the successful attack when you have the opportunity. You have to hopefully have gone first, or at least arrange the turn order where you have the first chance to take a swing. And the other one, which is often not thought about, is that you have to make sure that you have it in hand before the first attack has landed. Because if you draw into it, well, then you all of a sudden can't score it until the next round. So these are things to think about when you're talking about how does random chance affect, in particular, surges, to a lesser extent, end phases. One of Phil's notes has said, make sure that your surges are reliable at all stages of the game. I think that often can apply in general to most of your objectives. How do you guys feel about this statement here?
I agree with it as like something that is worth striving for, but I don't think it's like an end all be all rule. Like, I think you can skew an amount of your objectives towards different stages of the game, but you want to be careful with how many you're skewing to different stages of the game, because you can really start you can simulate kind of how you're going to draw in a game. And if you are giving yourself so many limitations on when cards can be played, you're increasing the amount of times you're going to receive a really bad hand, like a really bricked hand where either one or none of the cards are reasonably scoreable in any given moment. But I think if you want to tend surges more towards the beginning of the game, that's where I really like to see their effect. And if I had to pick a card that was either better at the beginning or better at the end, I'd pick better at the beginning in the surge department almost every time. I would prefer a surge that's reliable throughout, for sure. But for me, surge's number one thing that they're supposed to do for me is get the ball rolling.
Yeah. I'd like to give an example of that. I'm going to need Brian's help for a name here, but an example of a surge that is really easy in the early game compared to the end game. On the one side is there's a Reaver's card, Blood for the Blood God. Did you make three charges? Here's one glory. Very easy in the start of the game. They're going to charge 3 times. Often impossible in the late game because you no longer have 3 guys left alive. The counterpart to that, and Brian, I'm thinking of a Dread Pageant.
Endless Revel.
Yes. Lay that down for me real quick.
Yeah, it is a surge once all of your surviving friendly fighters have made a move or a charge. So towards the end game, if you only have 1 or 2 fighters remaining, you can do that after the first or the second activation, however many activations you need to activate all fighters. In round 1, you have 4 fighters, so it's effectively an end phase card.
Yeah, although you will still
surge it and
another one.
Yeah, but you can't build towards that like end phase game plan of the new card if it's an end phase.
Sure.
But yeah, it's easier late game to mid game.
Yeah, and I bring it up specifically though because it is, you can say I will score this in the first round. It is better in the late game, so that I think of those often as sort of counterparts there.
Yeah, so scoreable in all stages of the game is the ideal. However, in Nemesis, we do have fewer choices, so you have to kind of evaluate it. Early game, late game.
Sometimes a card that is just buttery smooth late in the game is worth putting in, and the idea being that I will maybe mulligan it if I see it, or draw to it later.
You just don't want that to be all your surges because you don't want your backup plan to be like, I'm going to be on the back foot every game.
Yeah, and looking at your objectives as a whole, looking at 12, I don't really like to run more than 3 cards that can't be scored outside of round 1. Like that's kind of the cap for me, and that cap includes like surges and end phase, but surges probably would only comprise of 1 of those 3, maybe 2 at most. Like I definitely wouldn't feel comfortable bringing half my surges that can't be scored during round 1.
Sure, and sometimes the distinction is this card difficult to score in round 1, or is it impossible to score in round 1? And the latter can sometimes be like, okay, if it's absolutely impossible, then
if you have a card that's like all of your fighters be in enemy territory and you have 5 fighters or more, then you can't make as many activations as would be required unless you have some sort of movement shenanigans or ploys to support it.
Yeah. Or your opponent helps you out by killing the one person you didn't want to move in there. But you shouldn't count on your... Yeah. If your plan is your opponent makes a bad decision, then maybe make a new plan. Let's talk about end phases. What kind of rules of thumb do you guys consider when you are selecting end phases for a deck?
Being that end phases take so long to score, I like them to be more than 1 glory because most surges are 1 glory, and I don't want to sit around waiting for 1 glory. So I tend to try and start at 2 glory, unless a single glory end phase card is extremely reliable.
The 1 glory end phase needs to be like it. Things have to be going absolutely terribly for me to not score this, because, like you said, the cost, the opportunity cost of having to wait around for that, and for it to be just 1 glory, is a problem. But that's not to say that they're bad. I know in the Gore Chosen deck I was running, there was the Unceasing Imperative and Unwitting Guardians, which are 2 Void Cursed Thralls cards that are very easy to score. They only get you 1, but I would consider those like, hey, if I draw these in the opening hand, I know I will be able to score these barring absolute disaster. Like I can make these happen. And sometimes that's worthy. Like we were talking about, this is a slower way than Surges, but it is a way to get the ball rolling.
Yeah. So I like to think of kind of like my glory total or my glory like capability within the objective deck being around 15 to 16 glory as an average in Nemesis. So the more one glory end phases I bring, the lower I think my deck compares to my opponents as an average. So if I bring more single glory cards, then I need to focus a little bit more on denying glory from my opponent.
Yes. Yeah.
As well as trying to find, like maybe in that case, I really need to focus on aggro or something like frozen key, chasm key, to make sure that I have a little bit of another avenue to get my glory reliably above that average. But ultimately, for me, the more one glory cards that I bring starts making me think that I'm playing to counter my opponent more, that I need to pay more attention to what they're doing, deny their scoring, because my one glories that I'm bringing are super reliable for me and aren't going to take as much mental gymnastics to make work. I'm applying those mental gymnastics to denial.
I think that's a really good point. I think, it's some of the advantages of a warband like Storm Coven is that they will probably give up 2 fighters in a game over the course of a game. But as long as they've timed their inspirations right, they've really only given up 2 glory worth of bounty if that happens. Meanwhile, I've been running some Grimwatch lately, and even on games that are going particularly well, I've probably given up 5 or 6 glory worth of bounty just because I have a lot of 2 wound, 1 dodge guys, especially early on, that just kind of collapse as soon as they get brushed up against. And so your need for glory ceiling depends on how much you think you're giving up bounty wise as well.
Yeah, that's a great call out. That's one of the reasons why when we were covering the mass deck, we were talking about how it's a good pairing for hordes as far as offsetting their glory bleed goes. Like it's not going to pair well with every horde out there for sure, but it's worth taking a look at because you've got 2-3 glory end phases in that deck that can really help offset that glory bleed that Davy's describing.
Yeah. We sometimes use the term, I know I've heard it once or twice in the past couple episodes, as a reach objective. Would you help define that for somebody who is new to deck building?
Oh, I always call this a goal card.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this would be something like Reshaped Realm, which is 4 points. It's in the Void Curse deck. And this is if all surviving fighters are Void Cursed, right? So this is a card where it's a high reward, but it's going to take a lot of effort over the course of a game and a pretty focused game plan to make it happen. But the payout is totally worth it. Yeah, so that's kind of how I would define a goal card. And I love building decks around goal cards.
Yeah. Brian, I think one for you is Paragon of, not indolency. What's the 1 leader is alive in a, be it enemy or friendly, in a Discord deck?
Paragon of Paramountcy or Triumph of Paramountcy.
Triumph of Paramountcy, yeah.
Yeah, so that's 3 glory if at the end phase a warband only has their leader alive.
Yeah. And so in a similar way, this gives you something you can be kind of working for the whole game while you're doing other things. Like in your case, it is, am I trying to make sure Vexmore stays alive, or am I trying to carve everyone away from the enemy leader? And it's got your goal end state sort of situation there. Frequently in the past, we would see these as third end phases. So they're actually pretty rare to see now. If you go back into older war bands from the first 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4th season, you'd see these pretty regularly. And it would be an objective that could only be scored in the third end phase. In the past, it would be include no more than one, and I think that still holds true. In the past, it would be don't even include one because our mulligan rule is much more punishing. Here, I think you can. You just have to recognize that even if you're including one, you may mulligan into it, or you may draw it alongside some objectives you really want to hold on to, and then you're either discarding it or it is clogging up your hand for the entire game as you try to carry it all the way to the finish line. So you should think of these as goal cards that don't have the flexibility of like, hey, things worked out and I scored it early, which you could do with Reshaped Realm. I've seen that happen.
Yeah, I like to think when I'm including a goal card, or at least something that you're not expecting to score until third round, like think about how you're going to feel when you only have 2 cards in your deck. Mm-hmm. Because that's going to happen to you in quite a few games when you run that deck. At least probability wise, it's going to happen. For me, it's like 100% of the time. But so that's something to think about too. Is how reliable are the other slots? Because there's a chance that you're only going to have 2, and so you're going to need those to be a little more reliable for you to make sure that those 2 slots are flowing as well as possible. Mm-hmm. We've talked quite a bit about kind of like rules of thumb when it comes to objectives, but we haven't really covered yet what will lead you towards picking certain objectives outside of reliability and amount of glory it's going to hand you. And sure. So when you're trying to decide, is this surge for me? Is this end phase for me? That can be a little bit more broader picture. Like you want to have in mind your warband's strengths. And so like the first place you're going to get an idea of that is from the fighter cards themselves. Take a look at what abilities you have, what stats you have, and kind of wrap your head around what the objectives are generally telling you. Usually they'll paint a little bit of a picture that you can marry with what your warband is offering from ability standpoints. So, for example, taking a look at Phil's Starblood Stalkers, they have different things pulling them towards objectives. They have this skittish ability that lets them kind of backstep and push for free fighters, so you can push them onto objectives. They have an inspire condition that is looking for them to be on objectives, and they have a few cards that are looking to score on being an objective. So you kind of start to build this idea of, oh, my warband has strengths when it comes to holding objectives, and so you kind of start leaning your game plan that way. And so it's not always the clearest thing, but kind of reading through your inspire, your stats, and even your power cards can help define what you think is capable with your warband. And then you just go for it. You just try it out.
Yeah, because you just don't want to be fighting against your own warband. If you have an elite warband and you choose a bunch of cards that are like hold 3 objectives, you're playing a very risky game where you're not going to lose it. And it just kind of doesn't flow well with that warband. It's susceptible and it's very fragile. So you might also have a warband that is not necessarily very offensive. They might have a bunch of, inaccurate attacks and only 1 damage, and trying to lean into an aggro build maybe counterintuitive.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, we mentioned gambits a little bit. Before we get onto that, I just want to make one last note about objectives, and that's, we say keep it to 12. There are occasionally reasons to increase it beyond that. I don't think I've ever seen a deck in the modern times that's more than 13. But I think Willie at Worlds had 7 end phase, 6 surges. Requisite did that in Acon 2022. I would just say if you are doing that, make sure you have a very good reason for doing that. So
I would say so as well. And one other rule of thumb I'd like to impart is anytime you can build redundancy in what your objectives are trying to do, maybe your surges are trying to do the same thing your end phases are doing, that's going to increase the reliability of your deck. And it's going to make it so that when you score a surge, you're already in a better place, a good place for your end phase scoring.
Sure. You've made progress towards an end phase that you may not even have seen yet. You've been made draw into an end phase. Say, oh, good. I'm already on to the 3 objectives I need to score this one, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is a gameplay tip as well, is whenever you have a surge in your hand, don't just make a play for the surge. Make the best play that you can to meet the surge, but that would set you up best for an incoming end phase that you could draw into.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It'll make you feel pretty galaxy brain.
Yeah, just calling out a simple example. Touching the realm is hold 2 objectives, and one of them is held by a wizard. And then the other one, shape the realm, is score this in an end phase if you hold 3 or more objectives, and one of them is being held by a wizard. If you have both of those in hand and you're scoring shape the realm, you're also scoring touching the realm.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, let's talk about power cards here a little bit. And power cards are going to be gambits, which are ploys or gambit spells, and upgrades. We know that the rule here is that you must have at least as many gambits as you must have at least as many upgrades as you have gambits, and you must have at least 20 cards in here. So the standard is to say 10 gambits, 10 upgrades.
Yeah. And to kind of add to that standard, you're drawing in 5 cards at the beginning of the game, refreshing up to 5, rounds 2 and 3. So without some sort of draw support, whether you're taking actions to do it or you have built-in cards that are going to help you draw, then you're really only looking at 15 of those 20 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really want to make sure that you're keeping what you could draw to be something that you really hope to see. Because if you increase that, so right now you're not seeing 5 cards on average in a deck without draw support. But if you increase your power deck, you're looking all of a sudden at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards you're not going to see. So you want to slim that down so that you're seeing the cards you want to more often.
Yeah. And the bigger the deck is, the higher the probability is that you can draw into those disastrous opening hands of 4 or 5 upgrades and 1 or 0 gambits, including even after mulliganing. That the more you have, the more possible that becomes.
Exactly.
When we're picking these, so we've kind of already picked our objectives. Your next thing here, and this is a thing that still trips me up sometimes, but when you are building that deck, particularly in Championship where there's so many more options, but even in Nemesis, to include a power card in your deck, it's not enough just for that power card to be good, right? Sometimes a power card is so good that you're like, okay, like this is just auto include no matter what my plan is. But it really needs to be not only good, but it needs to contribute to that game plan. Because even if it's great, if you're not scoring your objectives because you should have included something else, well, that's not really helping you out in the long run.
Yeah. So to speak to that a little more, I like having 2 to 3 pieces that can help me score any given objective. And so what that could look like is, let's say, Elemental Blessing, for example, is a card that Miari Purifiers has that says it's a surge. They're going to score it if they used up one of their, the name is escaping me, but one of their very specific tokens to them.
Aether tokens.
Aether Quartz.
Oh, Aether Quartz. Thank you. So one of their Aether Quartz tokens while using a elemental ploy, right? Mm-hmm. So they have 4 of those in their deck that they could bring along. And so if I'm running Elemental Blessing, I bring 3 of them. And I wouldn't really feel comfortable at 2. It's an option. I could slim down to 2 if I really needed reliability in other areas. If I only had the 1, it would be straight out. All of a sudden, I'm not running Elemental Blessing.
Yeah.
And that can be something flexible against what your war brand can offer. For example, if one of Miari's Purifiers had an ability that said, hey, when this fighter spends an Aether Quartz, it counts as if an Aether Quartz was spent towards a ploy. A weird example, but that would be one piece towards that 3 that I feel comfortable with. And all of a sudden, I'm only bringing 2 cards to pair with that.
Yeah. An example for me was running Void Cursed. I'd include the surge that is score this if your enemy has a Void Cursed fighter. And so for me, I would include it. It would be a spread across gambits and upgrades. I would have one upgrade that could help with it, and then 2 gambits that could help trigger it. And so now I've got 3 triggers for that card, but split across instead of just gambits or upgrades, spread across the 2.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a general philosophy here that I want to touch on, and this is when you're picking your gambits, you can pick them to be in the same way that we were talking about surges, that they're reliable across the game. You can pick them like either this is situationally amazing but won't always come up, or this is always at least pretty good. And so then whenever I have it, I should be able to do something with it. The classic example of the latter is a push. If we're sticking to Nemesis, then maybe like slinking in there from Paths of Prophecy, which is push 1 or push 2 if it'll get you on an objective. That's not going to like instantly kill a fighter or whatever, not that there's necessarily gambits that do that, but it is really hard to find a situation on the board where that is not useful to you in some way. As opposed to taking something that is a bigger payoff, but maybe not always usable.
Agreed.
Yeah. Push tech kind of goes to the ancient art of war Sun Tzu, like he said, flank them and spank them. Pushes give you the option and the mobility, more choice, whereas pure offensive power, great strength, or +1 damage on a fighter, doesn't matter if you can't reach the other fighter.
Sure.
So something Brian and I both like to do when we're deck building is we like to put the objectives out on the table, the 12 that you've chosen or the ones that you're considering. And we like to then put power cards underneath them. So, and you can kind of group the objectives. Hey, these ones are hold, these ones, like, so you kind of like start sectioning off what your deck is like trying to accomplish. And then the power cards that we are running, we like to see them fall into the support of one of those camps. So your objective is kind of at the top as you're looking at your table. And then does this power card support hold? It's a push. Yes, we're going to put that there. And so at the end, if there are cards that don't directly support an objective game plan, are they good enough to bring? Like, do you feel that this is still offering something great that you're going to enjoy because it is not directly working with an objective that you're game planning for?
Right. I like that thought process on it. We are talking about these reliable cards. The flip of that, and I bring this up specifically because I think in our local, maybe Jazz and Alex play a little bit to this other thought. Conventional wisdom says make sure it's useful almost all the time. Jazz and Alex are a little more inclined to build with a little bit of a high roll or a spike. So Jazz would take gambits that she might be trying to cast only on 1 dice or something like that. But the payoff on landing those is sometimes so high that it was worth it. And I've done that in the past too. There used to be a card that could cancel an enemy gambit on a 50-50. And you're like, well, that card only works half the time. I think maybe a better example would be as a championship card, but the Daylight Robbery. Very powerful, restricted for good reason. 50-50 to steal an unspent glory from your opponent. That kind of flies a little bit counter to the idea of like always useful at some point. Like it's not useful if they don't have unspent glory. It's less useful late in the game. But when it's totally useless if you don't roll that 50-50. But the high roll on that is so powerful that you sometimes include that. There is an example. There are some examples of where you might take something that is situationally powerful, if not always going to go off for you.
Agree. Brian, how do you feel about the like siloing that I was talking about? Painting kind of a picture on the table of these cards land in these camps to further these game plans.
Yeah, so we were deck building recently with Force of Frost, and there were several cards I had laid out with my Warband and Force of Frost requiring a number of spells to have successfully been cast during the phase. And so then naturally I needed more spells because otherwise you're only relying on the fighter cards for spell attack actions or spell actions that they may have, which you could only do 4 times in a round if you don't have spell gambit support for that. So what we did was we just stacked all the objectives that cared about number of spells cast in one pile and then laid out each spell action either via a upgrade that gives you a spell action, which again is only through those 4 activations, or through spell gambits, laid it out there so that we could make sure, like if you have a really high number of spells that need to be cast, such as Bitter Storm and Force of Frost, requires that 4 spells be successfully cast during a round. You're going to need, you're still rolling dice, so it's unreliable. Just because you're taking that action doesn't mean you're successfully casting it. So you're probably going to try and use all 4 activations to get that off, unless it just works right away. And then each spell furthers the chances that your plan is going to go off and you're going to score that card.
Sure.
So it just really helps visually to be like, okay, I feel comfortable. There's enough support here. Or maybe I'm leaning even too hard into it. In my case, there wasn't enough. I couldn't get it to work.
Yeah.
It can really help with the visualizing and realizing just how much resources you're attributing to this goal. And if you got, 6 ploys going to score 1 card, maybe that card's a little too hard.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Another rule of thumb, specifically upgrades that Phil kind of wanted to mention. If you're in doubt, if you have spots to spare and you're not sure, a good rule of thumb is that a card is just generally powerful if it's adding to your base stat. So adding a wound, adding a point of damage, adding dice to an attack or defense roll. These cards are typically hard to come by, especially in the Nemesis environment. So if all else fails, including one of those is often quite a good choice. So the one question that I wanted to hit before we leave power cards is something that's kind of unique to recent seasons. That's the salvage rule. This has changed the value of fighter specific cards. You guys, any thoughts about those?
Oh, I'm so glad you're bringing this up. Yeah, I love them now. Because for me, not only do you not have to worry any longer about, hey, this card is dead if this fighter is dead, but instead, not only is that worry gone, it's actually transformed the card into a draw in that situation. So I actually lean more towards trying to find some of these to include in my deck, just because it can help with the reliability of seeing as many of those 20 cards. So I look for the ones that I think are worthwhile enough to include if I do draw them, so I can use them when that fighter is alive, but also try to bring a couple just so that if I do start losing fighters, I can see more of my deck and really grab those final cards that I need to secure those final moments.
Yeah. I'm all with you, and I think particularly upgrades in this category are the more important. They're often more common than fighter restricted gambits, but cycling through, especially early game. Although I would say I guess fighters are more likely to be dead late game, and you're more likely to have glory to spend. So maybe it doesn't make too big a difference. But yeah. Don't be scared of them. Make sure they're still good, but they're okay to include for sure.
Yeah, and remember, some of these old warbands have a lot of restricted upgrades.
Yeah.
So just because there's no downside to having to salvage them doesn't mean that it's still going to be good to bring 6 restricted cards, because at the end of the game you can salvage all you want, but if all of them are dead, then so it's a
balancing act for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think barring anything else that folks want to say about power cards, I think we're going to move on.
I would just say, when you are experimenting with your deck, don't be afraid to put 11 and 11 in. If you're going to a tournament, definitely do your best to cut those down to 10 and 10. But I think like having, that extra card in each column in your power deck when you're trying to figure out what you like is totally fine.
Yeah. What I'll sometimes do is if it's down to 2 cards in a particular slot, I'll just say, okay, I'm going to include, whatever, I'm going to include this card, Bloody Worshipper or something like that. And if I draw it, I will keep in mind, hey, if I had included the other card, would I be happier about this right now?
Right.
That's not a perfect thing because you're often like playing specifically to the idea that you have one card or the other available to you. But it's a way to kind of help make those choices as you're refining things.
Another way to do that, because I struggle with that. So I've gotten to a point where if I'm playing casually, I'll actually show a card at the beginning of the game, and I'll say, "Hey, I don't actually have this card in my deck. Maybe I'll have a sticky note in there that just says draw." I was like, I just really want to think about if I had drawn this card, and my opponent will be like, "Oh yeah, sure," like that's fine. So then when I see that card, I'll put it off to the side, and I'll be like, "Man, what if that had been in my hand?"
That's cool. I like that.
One last caution I want to point out about gambits is this is something that's been a recent frustration of mine, and it's just a risk reward type thing. But gambits, your ploys, they're the instant use card compared to upgrades. And when it's a spell gambit, you're rolling dice and it might not go off. And my frustration has been I've been deck building with a lot of spells recently, 6 or more spells in my power deck. And when they don't go off, it's like, I did nothing like that. That's a lot of opportunity cost there.
Sure.
So spells can be risky. I just caution against that because there are plenty of ploys that just do the thing automatically and don't require dice to do it.
Yeah. If you include the spell version, make sure you have a reason for including it as a spell version.
Yeah. Especially if you're not leaning in spell casting.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot of generalized rules here, but for someone to get as far as following some of these rules of thumb, they will have had to, in the Nemesis environment, they'll have had to take their, and I think this is typically how people approach it. They have a faction deck, and then they say, well, what do I pair this with? So let's talk a little bit about how you choose what deck to pair with. Skyler, you want to launch us on that?
Yeah, so when I was describing getting a picture of what objectives to bring, what strengths your warbands have, that's going to be your starting point for a Nemesis pairing as well. And then a little familiarity with what Nemesis pairings could offer you is kind of the next step. So if you've kind of decided, oh, hey, like I want to try an aggro game plan where, I'm going to try to kill as many fighters as I can and get successful attacks and stuff like that. That's going to immediately inform what Nemesis decks might be best to first look at, when trying to complement that picture. Same would go if you were looking for a hold objective game plan or flex, magic casting like Brian described, or usually we like to talk about control as kind of like a denial game plan. So if you're bringing like very few high scoring cards and you're below that kind of 15, 16 average, maybe you're looking for kind of a control pairing to help you deny what your opponent is doing, give you more tools towards that end.
Yeah, so control's kind of hard to define just looking at a card, but basically it's disruption to your opponent's game plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense. So that's one way to think about it, is specifically game plan. I think the other axis to often think about is, what is it my faction deck is lacking? And for this example, I'm going to lean back on Gore Chosen. Gore Chosen has some great end phases. They have some pretty solid power cards. They maybe their upgrades are you run out of steam there a little bit, but what they don't have are particularly good surges. There was only 4 surges in their deck, and 3 of them need you to kill something. And so Gore Chosen, on top of, or maybe even more important than, helping with a game plan, they're looking for a pairing that can help them with surges. And if they find that, okay, this can help with surges, does this have a game plan I can work towards? And so that can also inform you. Like maybe you need a pairing that has great upgrades because you don't have decent in-faction ones. So that's kind of the other axis to think about on top of game plan.
100%. Yeah.
We and also you talk about matching up with your strategy. You can find ones that either match up strongly, like you were talking about, and I think a good example of this was Tooth and Claw pairing up with the Condemners, and for the Iron Claw, like Mike, Sleek's Bowl does. And he makes his Iron Claw where he takes, hey, this is a warband that has powerful range 1 attacks. Let me give him something that makes those even better. Give him more dice, give him more damage. Or like I said, doing a stopgap. Hey, I'm missing surges, so I'm going to go to Paths of Prophecy with Gore Chosen to give them some really strong surges to kick things off.
Yeah, the Iron Claw, Iron Soul's Condemners, and Tooth and Claw is essentially doubling down on what the Warband already does and wants to do.
Yeah.
So it's really good pairing in that sense. But then bear in mind what weaknesses might be lacking, such as range 2 or ranged attacks. Really got to lean into the utility there and pushes in order to make your game plan continue to function, because it's double down rather than being jack of all trades or a more broadened, having a wider stance kind of a thing.
Skyler, as somebody who's built with Toxic Terrors, and I'm thinking specifically your Elathane's Soul Raid, there's a phenomenon that happens particularly with Nemesis, that is some of these Nemesis decks are built to do a very particular thing. So here I'm talking like Daring Delvers in the exploration mechanic, Toxic Terrors and their poison gambits, Void Cursed Thralls and making people Void Cursed. So a lot of these decks have a particular thing they do, and you have to decide also when you're pairing, like, how much of this deck is really available and how hard do I want to lean into the thing that it does? Do you have any thoughts about that kind of process?
Yeah, it's case by case. So like in the example of Soul Raid with Toxic Terrors, that has some like multiple things that mesh together really, really well. Soul Raid are bringing with them poison cards already. So when you're looking at Toxic Terror, having scoring paths for poison being present, it's like, oh, well, if I can bring some of my own already, like that helps entertain this option more, and justify why I might bring this pairing. Another example would be Daring Delvers focuses in on domains being present. And I remember a deck I really enjoyed seeing locally was a Gore Chosen deck that focused really hard on domains and domain scoring. And so they were able to bring their own facets of that, and Daring Delvers was able to complement it. So I think when you can find like complements to those unique game plans that a deck is bringing, that really justifies that pairing and sees it as a worthwhile thing to explore.
Sure. I think we've talked a lot about the idea, and again, I think this is how most people go about it. They find a warband they like and then try to find something to pair it with. But you can also reverse this process. What's a deck I really like, and how do I find a warband that matches it? I most specifically did this recently with Masks.
Yeah, this is me in Masks right now.
Yeah, that's a really healthy exercise to help familiarize yourself and evaluate warbands that you normally wouldn't glance at.
Yeah. And here we're talking about, in our review of this, we did some theory crafting early on. We're like, well, I think what they want is survivability. They want numbers. They want resurrection. And so what warbands match that sort of thing? And you can do that with other things, Void Cursed, who gets penalized the least by Void Cursed, or perhaps even benefits from it. Okay. And then like, what will that work together? And you can back your way into some interesting pairings that way too. Well, that is kind of covering most of what we wanted to hit. For those who are not super familiar, we wanted to make sure that we point you to some resources if you're wondering, hey, what should I pair with? What should I connect with my faction deck? There are some resources out there for you. Skyler, what do we got that we can point people to?
So we can point to, we have a an episode that covers Nemesis pairings, like how you would deck build with them, why you would reach for them. That's episode 110, Making a Declaration. That does exclude Passive Prophecy Forward. At the time, it just wasn't out yet. So for more on Passive Prophecy Forward, we do a card-by-card breakdown on our blog. That's themortalrealms.com. And that will cover every Nemesis deck released yet. We got lucky. We started that project right before Gnarlwood broke and right before Nemesis pairings kind of became the new norm. Mm-hmm. So those are two kind of in-house resources for you if you're looking on, exactly which universal pairings you want to explore for your deck building. Another great place to start. This is a place many enjoy starting, and I know I go there for ideas myself. The Battle Mallet Nemesis deck library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got a laptop that I usually bring with me, and then a older one that we leave at home. It's kind of shared between a couple of people. My son has one tab for bookmarks, and the only bookmark in it is the Nemesis deck library. So
that's amazing.
But yeah, it's fun as like a starting point because he'll go in there, and we were running. I think we put together he really likes the claw pack, and they had a tooth and claw pairing there, and he's at the point now where he's able to take that, play it, and then we sit down and open it up and look, and he's like, hey, I want to find a room for this card or something like that. And so they're great to just pick up and play, and they're great as a starting point too.
That's a great way to just explore it in general. If you don't know how you want to start, but I want to try this warband, you can just pick up a list there, get to playing, and then you start actually feeling out what a lot of this means and can start working like Emmett does there.
Sure. For those decks that we haven't covered on that Making a Declaration, I was thinking we'd maybe just give a 1-sentence summary of the others to pair with anything that you can look up on the card by card.
Yeah. Well, I'll kick that off then with Passive Prophecies. So this is a hold objective focused deck, specifically looking at holding different values at different points in the game and giving you ways to not only get to those positions, but also to alter those values a little bit to meet your scoring needs. That's the relatively main focus of why you would reach for Passive Prophecy, but there's also some good surges in there as well.
Cool. Brian, do you want to pick one of the remaining three that we haven't covered before?
Yeah, I'll take Breakneck Slaughter. The name of the game here is Speed. Very strong objectives. It is aggro, largely. Stuff like Gale Force and Eager to the Fight, or Eager for the Fight. Really strong objectives, help with aggro stuff. The speed, it can get a little tricksy in terms of moving you around, but this deck doesn't require that you come with any prerequisites necessarily. It's not like Beastbound Assault where it's looking for specific keywords that will help the deck score. Mm-hmm. Breakneck Slaughter is plug and play aggro.
Let's see. Force of Frost. We see it in a lot of different builds, and it almost has a little bit of everything. There is a heavy dose of magic in there, but it has things you can reach for, even if you're not really going to do magic sort of thing, and some impressive defensive buffs as well.
Yeah, it's a very versatile deck. It even gives you the ability to make your warband a wizard deck.
Right. And that just leaves one.
I'll let you.
Okay. Malevolent Masks. The only bullet point I wrote for this was weirdness. That's not entirely true, but it is kind of true. It's a deck that you're going to, it's kind of unlike many others. It does care kind of about holding. There's at least 3 objectives in there that want you to have, be standing on an objective token for one reason or another. But it's a deck that you can reach for if you've got a lot of room to really work on a particular, like we were saying, do the thing that a deck wants to do. If you have space in your objectives and power cards to take a lot of stuff from one particular deck, then this has a lot to offer. And then, like we said, especially if you are have the ability to resurrect, have good defense, and enough bodies to really spread some masks out.
Absolutely. Another cool resource that's available that recently cropped up for Nemesis pairing is in the Vassal Discord, which you've likely heard of it, talk about before. If you're not already there, it's a great place to discuss the game. Wathlab has added, Wathlab is the head of the Vassal Discord and an amazing head at that. He has added individualized channels for discussing each of the pairings. And so that's a fun place. If you want to specifically explore a pairing, go see what people have already said about it, and go add to the discussion, ask questions, and things that you're looking to try.
Yeah. Well, does anybody have anything else they want to add to the general intro to deck building discussion here before we start to move to the closeout?
No, there's infinite amount of time that we could spend talking about deck building in specific, but this is hopefully something to help get you started and have a path forward.
Yeah. And hopefully a video or episode rather, that you can feel comfortable passing on to somebody else who could use a little bit of an assist in the deck building area.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us. If you want to get in touch with us, there's Twitter or X at WTHcast. There's our Gmail, whatthehexcast@gmail.com. We've got a lot of discussion happens in our Underworlds General, and that's a great place to talk. We actually had some really good conversations about the Dear Diary episode we released. Some people loved it. Some people it wasn't really for them. And to anyone who let us know one way or the other, I just want to reiterate that we really appreciate that feedback. Another way to give us feedback is to provide a review on whatever platform you're using. We don't usually ask you for this, but it does help us out. So if you have a chance right after you do this, hop on, give us a 5-star or whatever star you want, but we'd appreciate that. There's more of our content at themortalrealms.com that includes all the different shows on our network. We have coming up, man, we would love to talk about Grave Breakers because we'd have to have them in hand to do that.
I was really hoping that they would be around for Valentine's Day.
It would have been so appropriate. But Grave Breakers, please. But we'll see. Gentlemen, you know what time it is. And as an aside, I've not been keeping track of the last few episodes of what we did. So hopefully this is not a double dip.
But yeah, hit us. Flavor text.
All right.
Flavor text.
Yep. The only hint I'm going to give you is that this is an upgrade. But this will help. The quote.
Usually.
This quote is attributed to Dagok Finkstealer.
Yes.
Hang on, lads. I's almost got it.
Oh.
We're helping people improve the strength of this.
Okay. Brian, I know you've got it. What is it?
It's and it's an upgrade that no one. What's that?
Finkstealer?
It is. That's who it's by. This is an upgrade that nobody will ever take, probably.
Oh my gosh, this is the one that you have to pass to use, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh no, what is this called?
It is called Finken muscles. So we're helping you develop those Finken muscles. So.
Good pick.
All right, and then for your recommended listening, we are going with one of the legendary Wu-Tang Clan solo career. There'd be Inspect a Deck, and this is Movers and Shakers. So for what
this
the heck
exists? What?
for what the heck?
So
I've been
funny.
Davy.
I've been Skyler.
I've been Brian.